Welcome everyone to our conversation and presentation on gates and doors. Before we get started, there are a couple of housekeeping items I would like to address. First, this training session is being recorded, and we will send you that recording to your inbox shortly after the presentation is over. Second, we welcome your questions throughout the presentation. Please submit your questions in the chat, and we will get those answered at the earliest opportunity. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all. To start with, my name is Lucas Level. I am a deficiency estimator with Performance Systems. Essentially what that means is I'm responsible for communicating the specifics of any potential problems that may occur or exist at customers' properties. These could be deficiencies related to code, such as something needs to be corrected, or this could be something that is not operable and we need to repair it in order to ensure the property's security and protection systems are fully operable. Today's agenda, we will cover a number of types of doors and access control systems, as well as common service issues that usually are addressed by our Gates and Doors division, which is an all-in-one department designed to provide solutions for our customers within both the residential and commercial markets. Today, we are going to do a bit of a deep dive into the individual specifics of those services that we offer and the types of gates and doors that we work with. So to start off, we're going to work on gates. Pictured are two types of gates that you will commonly see. These are both considered swing gates. Initially, you have at the top here a double swing gate, which has two leaves that separate and allow a vehicle to pass through. These are most commonly seen in places where you have a wide driveway that can accommodate multiple vehicles, but sometimes can also be in places where space is at a premium, such as entering into garages or other forms of secure vehicle storage. For residences, specifically single-family homes or smaller HOA properties, you may only have a single swing gate with a single panel that swings open. In other locations where space is much more significant premium, especially in underground garages, you can have a gate that parts down the middle using a hinge. These are all points of movement within the system, and we will touch upon that later in a bit. But for the most part, swing gates, and as pictured here, a type of gate called a bifolding gate, are among the most common types of gates that you will see in both residential and commercial properties. The next most common type of gate that you will see is a slide gate, and this is what most people will think of when they think of a gate to enter into a property. A slide gate is a gate that slides along a track using either a motor, a wheel, or quite frequently a chain that drags along or that is guided along the rail with the gate itself. These gates have have fewer failure points than a swing gate, especially since the weight of the gate is on several wheels instead of a single hinge or bearing. Within slide gates, my apologies, within slide gates, there is a type of gate that moves along a track along the ground, as pictured here, as well as there is a type of gate that has a track that is mounted on the wall or a fence or other form of structure nearby. This is intended to prevent the gate from being able to move as much and is generally a bit higher security type of gate. You will often find gates that are mounted onto walls or tracks along the fence post or the wall itself with inside spaces that you just want the gate to slide out of the way and not be seen. My apologies. Sorry about that. The next type of gate that we service is a pedestrian gate. Now, everybody has seen these. They're all over the place. This is generally how you would enter into a secure area with a fence or other form of secure access control. These, like swing gates, you move on a pivot or a hinge, which again is another point of movement. But unlike vehicle gates, which generally are moved by an operator or sometimes by a person moving them by hand, these types of gates do have something that a person must interact with, in this case, the door handle. These gates have, because of the door handle, because of the hinges, and sometimes gates will also have a closing mechanism, such as a pneumatic or hydraulic closer. These are all additional points of failure that can be interacted with and or wear out over time. Pretty much everyone here has probably seen a gate that has either a squeaky hinge or the lock set is difficult to work with, and we will discuss those in greater detail as we move along. But these are the types of services and the types of repairs that we frequently conduct here at Performance Systems within our Gates and Doors division. After pedestrian gates, we do interact with and work on a number of security and entry doors. These primarily boil down to just the general access door to get into your facility. They could be made of both wood and metal materials. Traditionally, they are hollow metal or hollow wood and fiberglass doors intended to basically just provide a barrier from one area to another. But if you're looking for something a bit more secure, you can actually have these doors made of steel or sometimes even security screens in order to prevent primarily unwanted access. Within these particular types of doors, there are multiple points of failure and multiple points of movement, which are common areas that can create problems in ongoing operations and ongoing use of the systems. Garage doors, these are overhead rolling doors. They could roll up into a drum, they could slide along a track, they could just tilt up as one piece, but they are also another system that we service and we operate. These can be both controlled remotely or can be controlled by a person just twisting a handle and lifting the door up. We work with these doors to provide both secure access to residential garages, including single family homes, as well as to commercial properties, especially ones that have a large bay, such as a warehouse or a bay to store a vehicle. We service and work on all of these types of gates and doors. Lastly, one of the types that we encounter very frequently is a garbage chute and or intake and discharge doors, as they're known within the linen and garbage chute markets. These allow a occupant or user to dispose of or impart, I guess would be the proper term for that one, materials for collection into a central source. These are actually fairly important for the fire protection of a building because the chute is an access that allows air to move vertically through the building from the bottom to the top. Another term for that is a chimney. Chimneys allow air, and in the case of an emergency, smoke and fire, to very significantly and rapidly transmit throughout the building. There are two types of doors within a garbage chute or linen chute. Pictured is an intake door. If you have a large apartment building or condo building, you probably have one of these near your unit or a number of these with one on each floor. This has a latch that you turn and then you pull it down. The hinge is either pneumatically or spring loaded, and it only goes so far, allowing you to deposit small bags of garbage or other refuse into the chute. These are designed to remain closed and will often have seals along them to prevent smoke and other unwanted gases from coming out of the uh, area below. Generally speaking, at the bottom of the chute, there will be a dumpster, and dumpsters are not the most pleasant of place. At the bottom of the chute will be a discharge door. This is a door that closes off the bottom of the chute if in the event someone is removing the dumpster for maintenance, or more importantly, in the event of an emergency, that particular type of chute or that particular type of door will slide down if it gets too hot and the fusible link melts. They don't call a bad situation a dumpster fire for no reason. Dumpsters are both sources of fuel and just accelerants in the form of anything that someone has disposed down the chute. If a fire does start down there, it can very rapidly and without much warning get out of control. And if it has a garbage chute directly above it, that is a chimney for it. That means it will allow the heat to move upward and draw oxygen at the bottom, allowing the fire to get bigger and bigger and bigger. These doors are crucial to the safety of a building. If in the event that fire starts, when those discharge doors drop at the bottom, that prevents the air from flowing upward. That prevents the fire from traveling through the interior of the building and spreading to the upper floors. If your building has a garbage chute or if you're unsure if they have one, please contact us. We can review the property, go through the types of systems that you have there, and we'll gladly work with you for a free assessment if there are any repairs that are needed. As with anything that moves, whether that be it rotates along a pivot, such as the bearing visible here, or it slides along a track with wheels, as pictured here, anything that moves can have mechanical failures. These can come in the form of a wheel is bent, or a bearing, as pictured here, is worn out, or something could simply just be warped due to age and use. These are all types of things that over the lifetime of a gate or door will eventually wear out. I like this picture right here because it is a cardinal example of multiple failures at once. All of the weight of the gate that is on this one pivot point is pressing down into this flange bearing. This is the hinge for the gate. As the gate moves, all of the weight is now moved along the edges of the inside of this bearing, which means that the bushing that is in there is now being compressed. You do that often enough, the bushing will change shape. When it starts to change shape, that opens up these gaps that are visible right here. And that means the gate will now move in properly. And as the gate begins to move, it creates vibrations, which create this. The bottom of the pin is now prying away from the gate. These are fairly common. But at the same time, this is the type of maintenance that is often overlooked until something has already started to fail. This bearing does need to be replaced, but the gate is still working. There are other circumstances and other times where if it's gotten to this point, it's time to replace it, and or you may have a couple more days or weeks of continued use before the bearing slips out. Another form of mechanical failure has to do with the motor, especially when it comes to swing gates. This is all of the weight of the gate being put on yet another pivot point that has to turn. Unfortunately, especially in the form of any motorized system, that continued movement will create wear over time. Same with any moving objects, locks and handles have a wide number of small components that do move within them. They can corrode, they can swell, and for the most part, will eventually wear out over time. These are all types of systems and problems that need to be corrected in order to ensure proper operation of both your security and access control systems. After mechanical problems, the next most common problem you're likely to encounter is electrical in nature. I don't need to explain to anybody here that when you have electricity, you have heat. And when you have heat, you have the possibility of something wearing out or catching fire. I like this picture here. This is of a electrified door operator. It basically, when you push a button, it turns the operator on and it allows it to move. This is a little solenoid that does that for it. Otherwise, the door would remain open. However, this is a point that will get hot over time. As it gets hot, the solenoid will no longer work properly. These are common failures, especially in older components. Technology has marched on, but a lot of this older infrastructure within our buildings and our facilities haven't been really kept up with that technology as it marches forward. As pictured here, this operator, this is a door closer specifically, is no longer manufactured. It's about 20 years old. And 20 years ago, the types of solenoids they used were very, very different than the ones we use now. Beyond general electrical issues, you can also have a sensor malfunctioning. That could either be in the form of a smoke detector that detects a fire and tells the fire door this closer is attached to close, or it could be the safety sensor that prevents the sliding door at your entryway into your main lobby from slamming onto a person as they're walking through. There are also safety sensors on vehicle gates. If any moving component is moving through a space someone can travel through, it does need to have a sensor on it to prevent it from causing damage. Gates are heavy, and if you don't have a safety sensor in there, it could cause either injury to another or damage to a vehicle, for example, as it's passing through the space. That damage will be significant, especially if it's in a door or gate that is dropping. After mechanical problems, the next most common issue you're going to encounter is alignment related. especially with metal. Anything made of metal can and will warp when impacted. As pictured here, this is an aluminum door. This door is no longer going to be able to latch and close properly because it is bent. Now the glass may have survived, luckily enough, but the frame is bent, or the door itself and the frame around it are now bent from an impact on the outside. This misalignment over time can either cause wear and rubbing, especially in wooden doors, which will warp due to moisture. But more importantly, if it's a metal gate that's been slammed or a metal door that's been slammed, it will bend over time and eventually no longer be able to close. Once something starts to bend, becomes easier to bend it. Eventually, it will bend back and forth to the point where the metal is no longer rigid. Doors also have a fairly important feature for providing a barrier in the form of weather stripping. This is pictured here is a fairly simple door, but it does have weather stripping. You can barely see it, but it's this little bit of fibers. What they do is they provide a barrier to any kind of particles, moisture, or more specifically, just a little bit of a breeze from moving through. As when the door is closed, that is compressed fully. These reduce the energy loss within the building, as well as ensure that the environment inside of a building can be effectively maintained. As well, there is an application for emergencies. Fire doors will often be equipped with smoke seals, which prevent the smoke from being able to pass from around the door. This ensures that if somebody is in a space that does not have a fire, they are not exposed to the toxic smoke itself. When it comes to fire doors, if you're unsure that your fire doors have proper smoke seals, or if their smoke seals are not in good condition, please reach out to us and we will schedule a free assessment to look at the fire doors and make sure that they are in a operable state. If repairs are needed, especially to the smoke seals, we can easily and will happily provide you with a proposal for those repairs. Beyond manually operated doors, you can have automatic operated doors. These could be doors that you push the handicap button on the side of the door that opens for you, allowing you entry into the building. It could be a door that swings open. These are all systems that are considered automated operations. These, however, can suffer from a number of failures. Sensors can go bad. There could be something that gets in the way of the door or gate moving. But most commonly, there will be program-related issues. It won't be talking to other components within the system, especially from a digital standpoint. These are something that needs to be maintained pretty regularly, and many places do not do so. Who here has gone to the grocery store and the sliding door right at the front as you try to open doesn't recognize that you're standing right there? You have to wave your hand in front of the sensor and or just have to jump around or may even have to go to a completely different door to get into the store so you can spend your money there. These are failures of a programming nature. And unfortunately, when programming failures do occur, people are impacted. Usually inconvenience, but sometimes it can be a safety hazard. I mentioned impacts and door warping earlier, but I did want to bring a specific call to attention to these types of doors and the kinds of impacts they can suffer. These are fire doors inside of a garbage room in an underground garage. As you can see, someone's been banging the dumpster up against the side of the door, which is causing damage over time. It's not really very obvious how bad the damage is just from this picture, because from this angle right here, because that looks like any old kind of cosmetic damage. It may not be that serious. Until you look at the other side of the door, where the door is clearly warped and bent. This is one of the more important things that can crop up within fire doors themselves. If the door is bent, it won't create a proper seal. Fire doors have a rating that they're associated with. It's usually 90 minutes, but it can be as anywhere from 60 minutes to 3 hours. However, if the door is warped, that rating is compromised. It will no longer operate properly during that time period. And this is one of the more significant things that needs to be addressed from the life safety standpoint of a building. Fire doors contain a fire, but they also buy time for people to evacuate and emergency responders to address the problem before it gets out of hand. After you deal with warping problems, the next most common problem you're going to encounter will be of cosmetic in nature, especially when dealing with metal. Scratches, especially significant scratches or rust and corrosion, will add up and build up over time. In the case here, this is a fairly minor amount of damage, but if the door wasn't warped, eventually the door would begin to swell from the moisture intruding into it, and eventually that corrosion would expand. And nothing is greater at causing corrosion than environment, specifically outdoors. Pictured here is the bottom of a fence that the irrigation sprinklers for their landscaping were spraying upon. That spraying eventually eroded away the enamel coating and allowed the metal underneath to begin to rust. And this is just a steel piece of metal. Well, that steel eventually corroded, and as the corrosion starts, it does not stop. You can remove the corroded component, you can paint over it, you can scrub it off, but it will always come back. When dealing with components that are made of wood, they can decay or rot or warp, or sometimes you can even have termites living inside your fence, and that will eventually work its way to other wooden components, which will very quickly destroy them. Most common problem that people will encounter when it comes to their exterior gates and fencing will be corrosion. It's just a simple fact of life, especially with metal that is exposed to the atmosphere. Does anyone have any questions? This is an open forum. Anyone can go ahead and ask anything. I have a question from the chat. Besides regular maintenance, what are other ways to preserve the quality of doors and door hinges? Tenants tend to wear out doors by not closing the door behind them gently or properly. Slamming. I know that one very, very well, especially when it comes to a door that someone doesn't really feel that it's their responsibility to take care of. It's not my fault. It's maintenance's fault. It's the apartment complex. They need to take care of it. I totally understand. The most common thing that you can do in order to ensure that the door is properly and maintained and lasts well is to check the hinges. Hinges will squeak, hinges will wiggle, the door will wobble itself. All you need to do is make sure the hinge is in good condition, and the door will last a lot longer than you would think otherwise. As well, when you encounter somebody that is being rough on a door, try to educate them about, hey, don't slam the door, that can damage it, especially for heavier doors in apartments and other secure locations. This actually is a little bit of a segue into a common question I get is, does a hinge that is squeaking loudly mean anything? And actually it does. If the hinge is squeaking, that means part of it is either swollen, dirty, or starting to rust. And that means that there's already a problem that needs to be corrected. Usually just a little bit of lubricant and exercising it can resolve that quickly. But you do want to try to identify why that occurred. Is there water dripping on it? Has someone been abusing it and therefore it's now bent? So hinges are a vital part of the operation of a door, and I do really appreciate that question. Please address the hinges and or inspect them when you have the opportunity. In the case of apartments, I would recommend including hinges as a part of your annual inspections within the units. Hinge damage can and will destroy a door pretty quickly. So, does anyone have any other questions? I would like to call out a question that I received a few weeks ago. This customer has a garbage chute, but there's no door at the bottom. It's just a hole in the ceiling of their garbage room that drops into a dumpster. There was never a door there. Should they have a door put there? I'm going to give you the short and sweet answer is that yes, because now that chute is a chimney. Chimneys will lead to any fire that is down in that environment to getting significantly worse. But also, now you have a entry point into the interior of your building for things like rodents and pests, insects, outside environments. Let's say that your garbage room is actually just a exterior of the building where the dumpster is. Well, now you could have a raccoon climb up in there, or you could have moisture intrude up inside. Not to mention any number of unpleasant smells. If you do have a circumstance like that where you're unsure if the garbage chute has a proper door on it, especially at the bottom of the dumpster, it does need to be addressed and a new one should be installed. So, if there are no questions, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Going to give you guys the good old 10-second count. Do appreciate the feedback though. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So, what does regular maintenance do? Simple. It identifies signs of wear and tear before they cause significant problems, before your gate is not working, before your door won't open, and most importantly, before people are inconvenienced. How many times has someone gotten a call, the gate isn't working, I can't park my car now? It's a headache. But if you maintain things regularly, those become fewer and far between. One of the most significant things that we do within this maintenance is we check the operation. We make sure the gate is moving along its proper mode of transit. We make sure that the gate is actually closing properly. It's not slamming and causing other potential damage. Beyond that, we will lubricate hinges. And that is actually one of the things that keeps a hinge operable in as long a time as possible, especially on any hinge that is outside and exposed to the elements. In the case of tracks, well, especially if it's an in-ground track for your slide gate, vehicles are driving over that. Eventually, they will begin to bend. Regular inspections and maintenance of that track will ensure that you aren't going to experience a gate that now hops off the track and slides across the parking lot. These are all services that we offer. When it comes to operators and the motors of the gate itself, you need to make sure that the wiring is in good condition. There are insects and rodents that will chew on wiring just because it's there, as well as the safety sensors. You need to make sure that they are operable and in good condition and will detect what they're supposed to detect. These are all services that we here at PSI offer within our gates and doors department. Beyond that, cleaning is actually a fairly significant thing that we do with anything that's metal and metal components. We will wipe down and remove accumulated dust and or debris that can lead to corrosion building up. Previously, that picture that I showed of, go ahead and hop back to it. I can't hop back to it. Showed of the gate or the fence that was corroding at the bottom from the irrigation sprinklers. That's just water stagnant on top of it, building up on top of it and eroding away the enamel protective coating. Well, for all intents and purposes, if they had been maintaining that and cleaning it off regularly and not letting water stand on it, the fence would have lasted a significantly longer amount of time. Apart from that, then there are the lock sets, there are latches, there are moving components that people put their hands on. Those do need to be maintained as well. Within our division, we will maintain those by lubricating them. We will adjust them. There are little pins and screws on the inside we can adjust so that they're easier to turn. Or if they're starting to get loose, we can tighten them up a little bit. This regular maintenance ensures that your lock, which these are not cheap locks sometimes, especially for heavier gates, they can cost in the thousands of dollars, are being well cared for and will last a very long time. I mentioned the cleaning off of dust for a good reason. Corrosion starts to build up rapidly, as well as you can have anything that injects itself underneath the paint, or in the case of a wooden door, the enamel or lacquer coating that will eventually degrade the integrity of that door, gate, fence. And if you have like cedar siding, you're probably very familiar with how mold and uh, other forms of microbial, I guess would be the right proper term for that one, consumption of the material will very quickly cause a significant amount of damage. And then I appreciate the question about the doors from the tenants, because hinges do need to be adjusted periodically. So there are 5 screws along the inside of a hinge for a reason. You do need to tighten them in order to adjust the angle in which the door moves at. If you don't do that, the door hangs, it pulls on those screws, and eventually will strip them out of the door frame itself. Beyond that, you can make sure that the mechanism that closes the door is adjusted properly. Everyone everyone has walked up to a door and tried to pull it open, and it feels like you're having to lift a 50-pound bag of potatoes. It's heavy. That's the closer. The closer's tension is set too high. Sometimes, however, you could let go of the door and it slams loudly and forcefully shut. That's another piece of adjustment that is needed. Slamming causes deformations, bending, warping, and eventually that can lead to a door no longer operating properly. Maintenance doesn't have to be something that you treat as a chore. It does pay itself out over the course of time. A pound, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure does really truly apply, especially when it comes to anything mechanical or moving components like within your access control and security, physical security systems like a door. Beyond the actual mechanical side of things, the important elements within a door are the barrier it provides between one environment and another. Nowhere is this more important than when it comes to weather stripping and smoke seals. These are often made of a flexible rubber or foam composite that is designed to compress when the door is in its fully closed position. Unfortunately, that does mean that it is now rubbing. It will wear out over time and wear down. These do need to be regularly replaced, or especially in doors that are used frequently. So, believe it or not, increased energy loss is most commonly caused because of failed weather stripping. You may not know the door to your garage in your home has had its weather stripping fail, and now your unheated garage is sucking all of the heat, or in the case of the hot California summers, the 95-degree garage is now making your really comfortable 70-degree home less efficient because the AC is having to run more consistently. If you're not maintaining them and not inspecting them, then you will find that these failures happen much more consistently. I love this picture here, actually. This is one of my favorite pictures of a smoke seal situation. This smoke seal has disconnected from the door frame right here, but also it's very apparent to see this door is not adjusted correctly. The hinges need to be tweaked because the top of the door is now scraping along the door frame. Anytime you see where the paint on the door frame or the door itself is beginning to wear away, or you have a spot where the door seems to stick, that means the hinges need to be adjusted in order to ensure the door is operable as it's intended. For anything that involves wood, it can swell. And if you have a door that is rubbing, the most common cause will be a hinge. However, if the door is between two environments, such as the inside of your home and the outside, moisture can also intrude in there, which can cause the door to swell. This can usually be corrected with a simple sanding down of the surface of the edge of the door, but sometimes it will eventually get to the point where the door is no longer operable, especially if the door starts to get stuck in multiple places. As I mentioned hinges, believe it or not, they are the number one cause of a door being unable to be used. The hinge has just gotten loose and now it's scraping along one spot and it's hanging, or it could be stuck and jammed. Yes, you can have a door that eventually gets so swollen that it will stick in the door frame. But if you're dealing with security doors, if you're dealing with a gate or anything made of metal, swelling is much less of a concern and the hinge becomes a much higher concern. Not to say that hinges aren't a problem with wooden doors. They're probably mechanically speaking, the number one thing that needs to be replaced when it comes to access control and security doors. After that, anything involving an automatic door does need to have its sensors periodically checked, calibrated, and oftentimes they may need to be replaced. This is especially true if the sensor has a plastic cover on it. Plastic can scratch. Plastic can get covered in debris. Some people even paint over them, not knowing what they are. Well, that will prevent the sensor from working correctly. If it's a sensor designed to detect when someone's approaching the door to open the door, the, the sensor won't work. The door won't open. But if it's a sensor designed to prevent the door from slamming on somebody as they move through the door, that's a safety hazard, especially for environments where you're going to have people that may be elderly or disabled, healthcare facilities. These sensors are actually a crucial safety feature within those facilities. Without them, it's actually really likely that somebody will be hurt. Performance Systems offers a wide variety of maintenance services for these gates and doors, from your fire doors to your vehicle gate to enter your underground garage. These services are intended for the maintenance of these gates. We want to make sure that these are operable for as long as possible. Having to constantly replace and repair things is expensive, and over time, it does eat into the budget more so than you would think. With the services that we offer, it allows us to identify these problems before they become a serious concern, as well as gives us the opportunity to tell you, hey, your hinge is starting to wear out. We've adjusted it multiple times. It's time to replace that hinge. And we will offer a heavier duty hinge or a longer term solution so that you don't have to replace that hinge again in 2 years. You have to replace it in 10 years. Or in the case of vehicle operators, will identify the gearbox is starting to get a little too hot or it's not operating and moving as it should. Sounds are something that our technicians are trained to hear for. So if they are expecting one sound and they get something different, that could be a sign of a larger problem that our regular inspections will identify pretty quickly. Beyond downtime, this also improves the security of the facility. I have a customer right now that is they've literally told me price is no object because the security grill that is to secure their underground garage is damaged. It actually fell because of improper maintenance. And as a result, now their garage has been open to anybody in the public. They could walk down into the garage where hundreds of vehicles are stored, and they've had break-ins. By allowing somebody to regular, especially us, I should say, but allowing a regular maintenance of these security systems, security access control, and these vehicle gates, you reduce the vulnerabilities of your property to intruders, unwanted persons. For that underground garage, let's say that it was cold outside. Well, now you could have people go into that garage and now have a environment outside of environment separated from the outside, I should say, where they could be warm. Well, now you have people squatting inside your garage. Beyond that, it saves you money in the long run. Like I said, you may not have to replace the engine in 2 years, you'll have to replace it in 10 years. That regular maintenance extends the lifespan of your systems, particularly in the case of security systems and access control, because they are not cheap. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They are not cheap. So, with our services, it also allows you to bundle our services together. You could have your fire doors being inspected at the same time you do your fire alarm system. We do want to make sure that our customers have a complete service with us whenever possible, and we will work with you to however needed to schedule that. We will also work on integrating the systems together seamlessly. Some people may have an access control system to enter into their pool, but have a completely different system to enter into the parking lot to park at their condo. We can work with having those systems seamlessly integrated so your residents only have to carry around one fob or one remote, or could simply use their phone to open both. We work with a number of systems designed and intended for the compatibility and efficacy of access control for our customers. Beyond that, we try to maximize the convenience. Our services are scheduled on a consistent cycle, so that way we always are there every 3 months or every 6 months, however is needed based off the traffic plan and the desires of the property. With routine maintenance, it allows you to more regularly and more effectively find problems before they arise. And with that, we can provide a one-stop shop, one-stop solution, my apologies, for all of these systems. You may only want us to work on the door keying teleentry system at your gate, for example, but we will check the gate just to make sure. If the hinges need to be worked on, we'll communicate that. We'll try to be an all-in-one provider whenever possible. Our technicians are certified and experienced with these systems, they will very quickly identify, no, you need to replace this or this needs to be adjusted, and they will be able to do it for you right then and there. We provide tailored solutions for those needs as well. Beyond that, we will offer recommendations for upgrades or adjustments to improve the system's operability. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, technology does march on. So we do need to make sure that these systems are operable to the best capabilities of the property and is to increase the convenience to the property whenever possible. And like I said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Regular maintenance does ensure that you don't have to replace your gate operator after 5 or 6 years. You could replace it after 20. We will work with you to make sure that these systems maintain operability as long as possible. Even if that does mean replacing some occasional components, it's much cheaper to replace a motor or a bearing than to have to replace the whole gate operator. Fire doors, garbage chutes, even access control and vehicle gates do have some compliance standards that apply to them. We will work with you to make sure that we are reporting and ensuring these compliance standards are met to the best of code for you. This includes comprehensive documentation and reporting to fire department and safety officials as needed based off the authority having jurisdiction or AHJ as required. This does come with some peace of mind. It does ensure that you don't have to worry about scheduling your fire door inspection because it's already going to be scheduled by someone else. You don't have to worry about making sure that your gate is going to be secure because we will be out there regularly to check the gate. And when we find problems, we will inform you of them before your gate is stuck open and anybody can walk in and squat in your garage. Our systems, our plans are tailored to what you have at your property. If you want us to focus on one particular element and then occasionally loop in something else, we will gladly do that. But if you want us to work with all of it, we can do that as well. It's all customized to what your building and your facility has that is needed. Within that particular vein, our plans are fully customized based off of several cycles. We recommend quarterly servicing, but there are also some that are code compliant and code demanded, such as in the case of fire doors and garbage chutes. They need to be done at a minimum of annually. This is to ensure that they are operable in a emergency service, as well as in the event of any inspection or additional upgrades that happen to the building, that the relevant documentation and the history, importantly, will be there. So for that, vehicle gates, it's dependent on the traffic that it gets through. If your gate opens maybe once an hour, yeah, probably don't need to have us go out there every quarter. But if you have the gate open, say 100 times a day, quarterly inspections are strongly recommended. That's a lot of mechanical motion on the hinges. That's a lot of cycles on the motor of the gate operator. This will eventually, over time, wear down those systems and they need to be properly maintained. For pedestrian gates, the weight of the gate, how much foot traffic you expect, these are also a factor in there. Quarterly services and inspections are recommended, but if the gate is only opened a couple of times, we can work with you gladly so to identify what service frequency works best for you. For fire doors, these are actually governed by code, specifically NFPA 80, which California has adopted. Fire doors are rigorously tested and are set up in a specific way to provide a barrier between environments in the event of a fire for a set amount of time. As pictured here, these are two fire doors that look identical. The fire is on the same side, that's the same space, but clearly one has already failed while the other is still in relatively good condition given what's happening. Annual fire door inspections are mandated by code and should be conducted concurrently with your fire alarm inspection to make sure that the door is operating properly. It's closing in the event of a fire alarm activation, or it's closing in the event of the presence of smoke, and is operating and or effectively latching. That's, believe it or not, one of the more common issues that we encounter to prevent the fire from spreading from one point to another. Beyond that, security and access doors, these are a supplementary system to pedestrian gates. We do recommend that they be inspected at the same frequency as you expect your pedestrian gate to be used. So if you need us to go out there every year to make sure the gate is still in good condition, then we can do that. But if you need us to go out there every quarter, or because you have 100 people going through that gate every day or that door every day, quarterly inspections will allow us to very quickly and easily identify what areas need to be corrected, what corrections and repairs are done, and most commonly where the most common failure points will be, so that you can effectively plan for future maintenance concerns and eventual repairs as needed. For garbage chutes, these are also governed by code, specifically NFPA 82, which also has been adopted by California. These inspections are required annually and can be done alongside your fire alarm and fire sprinkler inspections. There are also often sprinkler heads inside the garbage chute, which is why we like to suggest pairing them together. These inspections do need to be documented with the fire department and generally can be offered as a bundled or standalone service. Depends on the needs of your property and what all is involved in the system that you have. Not every garbage chute has sprinkler heads, for example. Please feel free to contact us for more details on what can be done to that particular effect. Lastly, I'd like to touch upon access control systems. This is a service that we offer that is more of a programming related function. For any access control systems, whether it be a key fob entry, a telephone entry system, we work with a number of systems to ensure that they're operated and functional to the best of their capabilities and their design specifications. We are ourselves a door keying dealer. We work with door keying systems. We have multiple programming suites for them, and we can provide you with a number of access control systems for door keying. Programming support does generally require us to first identify what you need in there, but we can set up cloud-based systems so that way you can add in new residential fobs by just logging in online, or you can send us a list and we can set them up for you. We can also provide you with a regular supply, if needed, of key fobs, just in case your, let's say, apartment complex goes through about 100 fobs a year. Well, then you know that every year a new box of 100 will show up for you, and they're already preset and pre-programmed for your system. Please contact us for more details in order to set up these types of services. They are specific to the code ranges and the programming suites that you have within your access control systems. But for the most part, once we have them set up, it's actually a pretty easy system to keep rolling forward from there. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot of information relatively fast, and I didn't mean to bombard everyone there, but this is a fairly broad-ranging topic, and I did want to make sure that this is intended as a form, this is as intended a forum for everyone to be able to discuss and or bring up any concerns they may have. So, one thing that I encounter pretty regularly actually, is the plates on fire doors. As mentioned, fire doors are engineered in a specific way. They have a fire rating to them. They're designed to hold back fire for a specific amount of time. This is shown on a plate that is on this edge of the door. It will usually be about 3, 4 inches at most long. Sometimes they get painted over. Sometimes they could wear out. Sometimes they can get faded due to moisture, exposure to the elements, or just age. This is something that the fire department will look at when they're inspecting the property. If your fire doors are not being regularly inspected, it could be something that's overlooked. That rating is tracked and relatively important for the safety of the facility. If you do have a fire and the door rating is unknown, well, the fire department may not be able to effectively respond to ensure the building's protected. Alternatively, if the plates are missing because it's not a fire door, it will not operate as a fire door in the event of an emergency. I see that we've got a couple of questions being typed in there. So open forum, everyone. Feel free to ask any questions that you may have. We'll very gladly be here to answer your questions. So, as mentioned, that if you want your services to be bundled together, you want your fire doors to be inspected at the same time where they're testing your fire alarm system, we can of course accommodate that. If you'd prefer us to separate them out so your fire doors are being inspected when the alarms aren't sounding, we can also work with that. We can also work with other vendors as needed. It all depends on what the customer you need for your facility. Not all properties have a fire alarm or fire sprinkler system. They may have fire doors. Would a maintenance service for the gates mentioned today apply for roll-up shutter gates? Yes, actually it would. It depends on the style of gate, but yes, we do work with roll-up shutter gates. I would appreciate it if you could reach out to us and get me some more information on that. Um, if you need to, I can post my email here shortly, but I will gladly discuss what additional maintenance needs are used for shutter style gates. There's a couple different proprietary brands, specifically Firefly ones that can be a little complicated, but for the most part, we can work with any of the roll-up shutter gates. Well, oh, happy to happily, Kevin. Well, we do have a number of other upcoming training sessions. The QR code on screen right now will allow you to register for those sessions. They will be coming up over the next couple of weeks and cover a variety of topics. Please contact us if you have any gates and doors or access control needs as needed. We will happily work with you to maintain your property's access control and life safety systems. Performance Systems Integration is aiming to be a one-stop shop for all of your life safety needs, and we gladly look forward to expanding or extending additional relationships with all of our customers. If anyone else has any questions, we'll go ahead and stay online for a few more minutes. Thank you all for attending. It was very much a good experience, I should hope. Just do see someone is typing in the chat. Apologies for looking off screen. I've got my chat over off the side. Give it a good old 10-second count, and then okay, everyone. Thank you for attending. Much appreciated to all the attention that was here. I look forward to hearing from all of you in the future. Thank you, and have a good day.